Welcome to the 16th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, Sports Director Casey Kantz of WTAJ Sports, and a special guest analyst each week. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue in Altoona, just ask rental. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South of Altoona, ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
All righty, welcome inside another edition of the NitWits. Casey Kantz alongside the Altoona Mirror's Neil Riddell, Fight on State's Mark Brennan, and former Nittany Lion Joe Nastasi back with us. Joe, how you been?
Very good, thank you.
We bring you on. Penn State wins. We have the bye. Might it happen again this week?
I like that. I like it. You know, big dog there this week, and bring me on, and there we go. Michigan, something about Michigan.
Man, well, we'll stick around and get your pick, obviously, coming up a little bit later in the show. But let's talk about that Michigan game. Quadruple overtime win. One of the best wins in Penn State history, I think we could say, certainly in Beaver Stadium history. Where'd that rank on your list, Joe?
You know, that was up there.
It's number 2 for Joe.
Well, it's number 2. Exactly. Let's start out by saying number 2 because, like Mark said, it wasn't enough snow for that game. But really, when in any time you look at this team and the O'Brien team, and ever since he's taken over as head coach, it seems like all the wins are just gut wins, and you really can appreciate that as a fan. It's not like you're out man-on-man beating teams. It's a lot of it's gut, and that really goes a long way as far as a letterman, as far as a fan, and I'm sure that the people out there in the NCAA world didn't necessarily like the fact that we won a game like that on a big stage.
Neil, you've been on the beat for a long time, and I know we talked about it a bit last week on the show, but I mean, one of those wins that you're always going to be talking about.
Yeah, and this was a lot of, because of the open date and because it was so dramatic, there was a lot of follow-up discussion among writers and the message boards and where this win ranks. I thought this was the best finish in Beaver Stadium history. Not necessarily the best game or the best win, but I thought because of the drama back and forth. Now, of course, you go back to Nebraska in '82, and that was a great finish, but it was also a little, pretty tainted as far as how far McCluskey was really out of bounds. But that was more of a game on a national stage, great win, but I thought this was the best finish.
I know Neil and I we probably covered about 700 yards going back and forth in the overtimes, and I think we were pretty exhausted. But I'll go back to what Joe said. This is a huge win, but I think it's really important in the context of this season because if they lose this game, all of a sudden you have a 2-game losing streak going into the bye. You're going to Ohio State, which is going to be a tough game out there, and I think a lot of this season is really just deflated. And the fact that they were able to pull it out, even though the players and coaches were exhausted in the media room, you could just kind of tell how they still now have that energy, and I think it gives them hope going forward into this season. And then guess what? After that, as these scholarships start to come back, this is kind of, I don't want to call it a tipping point, but I think it's important in the context of this season and moving forward.
Collectively a top moment, that game as a whole for us so far through 6 games. How about individually in some moments that have stuck out so far? I think we're going to all pick probably Robinson's catch there that got them in position to tie that football game up. How about Sam Ficken's 54-yarder against Kent State as well? What else has stuck out to you guys through 6 games in terms of moments that have really been amazing?
I mean, I think the play of Christian Hackenberg, listen, he came out blazing the first couple games, and I think people made some adjustments. The important thing to me is that he didn't let that get him down. Even when he struggled, when they needed him in that Michigan game, he was just outstanding. And defensively, you know, they've had their issues. I think Daquan Jones came out and played real well early. But again, look at what happened in overtime. You go 4 overtimes and give up 6 points, there's something to be said for that.
Sure.
I was going to say the same thing, but then in that Michigan game, you saw Mosby Felder come up with a couple big third downs. So
definitely.
that gave him another target. Now, you're seeing less balls going to the tight ends, and there's reasons for that. You know, we're not in the film room breaking it down, and you'd figure you'd go to that a little bit more, but he seems to be hitting the edges more with Robinson and Mosby Felder. I was happy to see Belton get a lot of burn there and playing that whole second half. I wasn't sure why Lynch didn't, because I thought maybe he started wearing out. And I thought Lynch was a pretty solid player. But overall, I would say Hackenberg would be the one that you want to say, look, the guy's young and he's still getting it done.
Yeah, I agree with that. Belton, a gutty effort and very patient on that key fourth and one run. I mean, he carried 20 times after halftime, which I think we kind of got a little bit lost. You know, just to build on both these points, you know, to me, the ingenuity that O'Brien has shown and the quarterback development that you mentioned, but the fact that they went for that on 4th and 1, the more you look at that in the fourth overtime, I mean, that was such a defining moment and a gutsy call.
And they stuffed it. If you look, they stuffed that run, and he had to be patient enough to bounce that. You're correct.
One of the interesting things, too, real quick, is if you look at the Michigan message boards, a lot of people are like, uh-oh. You know, you look at what Penn State has now with 61 scholarships, and I think there's a lot of respect for what's going on here. I think people understand how difficult it was what Penn State went through, and we do have to remember, listen, as critical as we were after the Indiana game, you know, they did only have 61 scholarship players, and to be able to beat a ranked team in quadruple overtime with 61 scholarship guys, pretty impressive.
It really is. How about some moments through 6 games that have made us maybe go, yikes, like some situations that we've seen. The Indiana game was obviously full of them. Zach Zwinak's been kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type player. I mean, he's leading the team in touchdowns with 8, but this fumble for 1 against Michigan, I mean, that could have been a huge turning point in that football game if Penn State didn't win. It actually was a turning point.
Joey, what are you seeing with him? Because obviously this is a bullish workhorse type guy who has played outstanding, but to me, his ball security is something that really has to be addressed, because it doesn't look like it's not like he's getting stripped from behind and popped blindside. It just doesn't seem like he's putting the ball away.
And you see this with certain running backs, and it seems like when it happens, it starts to really happen a lot. You see guys that never fumble in their career. You'll have guys that will have, 1,000 carries and put on the ground once. These are sometimes the more they're addressed, the worse it gets. I'm sure there's some technique situations that they're going to work on, but having said that, it then becomes mental.
Does it matter if you wear gloves or not? He doesn't wear gloves. You've carried the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I always wore them, but
what difference does it make?
I think it's a preference. I just think it's a preference. Most guys do now because of the way the tack is on them. They're outstanding, but he doesn't. I don't think that's really the issue. I think a lot, like I said, I believe it's mental with those running backs, because they're all strong. They can all carry the ball well. I don't think it's that. It's the more you're aware of the fumble, the more you do it.
What happens for here with it? I mean, we haven't seen a depth chart yet. Fortunately, there was an open date to kind of work this out.
Yeah, I think you've seen that the pattern has kind of been this year that if somebody fumbles, O'Brien's pulling them and they're not playing. Yeah. I mean, Hackenberg was a different story because he's your quarterback, but it happened with Geno Lewis. I think in the Indiana game.
That was late.
He's going to be, I mean, this kid's going to be back. He's a good back, and we saw last year how much better he got as the season went along. I just think they're fortunate that Belton really turned it around from last season. I mean, that guy, you talk about a guy who showed a lot of heart. He could have really put his tail between his legs and just given up, left, and he didn't. And now he's real important to him. And as you mentioned, where's Akil Lynch? They're still in a pretty good spot there if they could get this one thing dialed in. But it's a big question. Can he get that dialed in with the fumbles?
In really about 30 seconds, what do you think is the situation with Akil Lynch and why he hasn't?
My guess would be that they're a little bit nervous that he's not as good in pass protection as the other guys. Christian Hackenberg's been taking some hits, and the last thing you want to do at this point is get your quarterback wiped out.
We have to step out and take our first break. We'll take a look at some of the top performers of the first 6 games of the 2013 season. Stay with us. You're watching the NitWits.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue in Altoona, just ask rental.
I'm Miles Diefenbach from your Penn State Nittany Lions, and you're watching the NitWits.
All right, thank you, Miles. Welcome back. Penn State enjoying their second and final bye week of the season. They'll try and knock off a second straight ranked opponent coming up this weekend when they travel to Columbus to take on Ohio State. If the Nittany Lions are going to have any chance, they're going to need another big performance from the defense as well as limiting those mistakes on offense. Kind of along those lines, guys, who are the guys on both sides of the football and maybe on special teams who have stood out to you through 6 games? I mentioned Christian Hackenberg for one. Who else is standing out?
Well, Robinson. I mean, he's just made. I mean, as well as Hackenberg played on that last drive and those 3 receptions, I'm not sure we've ever seen a Penn State quarterback take a team 80 yards in 3 passes, boom, boom, boom. I think those 3 receptions were even better than the 3 throws. I mean, they were just incredible.
Yeah, and Bill O'Brien said that on the Big Ten conference call last week. I mean, he made sure to mention that Felder and Robinson both did well. The guy that's played real well for me, even though he's been burned a couple times, is Glenn Carson. They needed some leadership at that linebacker position with the guys they lost. And I think overall, this guy's giving you the 10, 11, 12 tackles per game. Yeah, he had a little bit of trouble with an outstanding tight end, but overall, I think he's been kind of a solid leader in the middle of that defense.
That really wasn't his fault. I mean, the middle linebacker can't be guarding the tight end, right?
Yeah, and I think John Butler said afterward that, listen, there are times when you try to get pressure in different areas, and if it doesn't get there, everybody wants you to blitz, but you're going to give up some plays at some times.
That safety made a little mistake. He didn't get off the hash. I remember that when he went down the hole and he scored that one. But I would say defensive line, much more active all across the board there. Help me out with the name again.
C.J. Olanian.
Yes, correct. Yeah, he had a great game, real active. I like the way that they played this game as opposed to last week. Last week they couldn't get heat with 4.
How about the 5 when they were playing 5D linemen? I mean, that was and Butler said afterward that's something that when a team like Michigan that runs the ball a lot, they thought they were able to do that. But that was some innovative coaching.
I like the fact that you started to see more defensive linemen earlier. He started Zettel,
right?
And then they're playing 72 Gaia.
Gaia.
And I think they've given them a lift. They started to look like they played a few more people.
Olanian, the Michigan native, had almost a coming out party there. He was a guy that you had on your list, I think, in the preseason to keep your eye on there.
Roll back.
Definitely, and especially with...
he can pronounce his name now.
That's why I ask him for help.
One thing at a time.
And in terms of guys that we'd like to see some more from, I think we've talked a lot about Deion Barnes this year, and we were talking how good the defensive line has kind of stepped up at times. Deion Barnes is still having some struggles there, trying to get up to what we saw from him last year.
He may be, again, it may be schemed a little differently. A lot of times, offensively, a lot of, Monday morning quarterbacks are saying, well, you should have done this or that. But schematically, it might be set up a little different when they had Jordan Hill in there.
Yeah.
Things may have changed as far as, who's taking on blocks and how. Again, it's tough to sit there and assess it from just watching, TV or watching the game live. But again, a lot of it could be set up in how and who's getting free and what, and who's absorbing blocks down on that front line.
And when you're the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, I mean, people are going to adjust, especially when you lose Jordan Hill and Massaro and Sean Stanley, and these are guys, Massaro and Stanley, who played a lot of football, and Jordan Hill's obviously in the NFL. The other guy on defense, who to me has been, I hate to say disappointment for kids like this, but I expected more, was Adrian Amos. I know he's changing positions, but overall, I thought this would be a guy who would emerge as a big playmaker, and he has yet to do it.
Yeah, he got caught on one was a borderline pass interference penalty.
That doesn't even bother me because he's out there playing physical. My thing is, I expected somebody in that secondary to come up as, get a pick 6 here or be more of a playmaker. And as a veteran guy, I thought maybe he was the guy, and he just hasn't done it.
We're going to step out and take another break. When we come back, we're going to continue to look ahead at the next game, which is against Ohio State. and the final 6 games in general, what we expect to see from the Nittany Lions. Stay with us.
The NitWits are brought to you by the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South of Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal.
I'm head football coach Bill O'Brien of the Penn State Nittany Lions, and you're watching the NitWits.
The big dog bringing us back to the NitWits, definitely. And you mentioned being in the film room, and we're still waiting for that invitation from Coach.
Yeah, he keeps saying, I'll bring you guys in the film room.
be nice
We're waiting.
A substitute for Friday night.
Yeah,
I
there
think
you
it
go.
would be great. Get in the film room with Coach O'Brien and break some of this stuff down. Welcome back to the NitWits. A couple weeks back, guys, we were all set to adjust our final season predictions after that tough loss.
You were.
At Indy. Hey, I think it was valid, though. I think it was valid. It's the first time you'd ever lost to Indiana, but the Nittany Lions come right back and put it on me. It made me look like an idiot. And they come back.
I wonder about that situation.
We just took over the show from Casey.
I'm going to bail them out. In the NFL,
Appreciate
you can lose 3-4 games and still have home field advantage the whole way through. There's a lot of NFL flavor on this staff. I just think they weren't ready to play against Indiana, kind of overlooked it, and here they were. They geared up. It was the old trap game.
How much of a drop-off do you think there might have been, too, after the emotional lift given by the sanctions being reduced? And O'Brien tried to play that down, but you have to imagine in the back of their heads, they're like, wow, this is such great news, and maybe they weren't quite as focused as they needed to be.
4-2 through 6 games. You see it going down the rest of the way. I don't remember what your preseason pick was, but
the chair.
The chair.
Again, it's every game's just it's really a bowl game for us. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why this game was just like the Rose Bowl for us, and next week will be the same thing. Time will tell. Again, I couldn't really sit here and say we're going to win 3, lose 3 in between every game, and I just like the guts that they do, and they let it all out on the field, regardless of who's out there. Fumbles, turnovers, whatever I just like the gut check that we have every time we go out. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And to build on that, without the chance to go to a bowl game, and Joe, you were at a bunch of bowl games. You saw the reaction to the Wisconsin win, the Michigan win. There's not that many schools that can duplicate it, in part because these are the bowl games.
Sure. And they're so watered down now. I mean, that's the other thing. This game here, as opposed to a Chick-fil-A bowl or something, there's so
easy. You'll be getting letters from Chick-fil-A.
Well, there's so many. There's so many, and you've got teams that don't deserve to go to a bowl game with a 500 record going. This is to me is much better than any of them other than the BCS.
Yeah. Plus, you guys would race down there for 2-a-days around December 20th.
Yeah, that wasn't fun.
And Neil, I mean, at the end of the 11th season, in case you were there too, we're down at that Texas Bowl. That had to be.
That was a morgue.
No, I know, but even if that had been, even if there had been no controversy,
Could you come up with another example?
No, but my point is that. You would play 100 games at Beaver Stadium before playing one of those Ticket City Texas Bowls.
Right.
How about the atmosphere, though, at Beaver Stadium? That's a good point. That atmosphere in Michigan, I mean, that was unbelievable. Do wins like that, is that going to keep people coming back, you think?
There's no question. That's such a recruiting tool as well.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want to do that in their backyard, their home field? You just can't duplicate that at every school. It just doesn't happen.
You're coming off the most disappointing loss of Bill O'Brien's albeit short tenure at Penn State. I'm wondering if, when these sanctions came out, did anybody envision Penn State still being able to have that sort of atmosphere? And I was blown away. And I will tell you that crowd, I mentioned it in last week's show, if they could give out 107,000 game balls, they would give out 107 because that played a role in that game. And guess what? Yeah, maybe there will be games when there's 85, 90,000. But when they ask these people to show up for a big game, white out, one of the best opponents on your schedule, everybody showed.
And they won. And they won in 4 overtimes and in thrilling
It's got to mean to them where you have Illinois, Purdue. I think Nebraska, I would think, would now have a pretty good chance senior day to be a sellout.
All right, guys, let's step out, take one final break. As mentioned, a tough trip to Ohio State now on tap. We'll give you our predictions and our picks coming up.
The NitWits are brought to you by The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
All right, really tight on time. Picks for the Ohio State game, Mark.
Yeah, I like what Penn State did against Michigan, but this is a whole different ball game. I'm going to go 34-24 Ohio State. Read my rationale at FightOnState.com.
I 36-26 Ohio State, I think.
Okay, I'm going to say Ohio State 32, Penn State 20. I wish the game was at noon out there. I think.
Yes, Joe?
I'm going praying for rain, Penn State 24, Ohio State 20.
All right, those are our picks. We'll see you after the Ohio State game. Good night, everybody.
The NitWits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue in Altoona, just ask rental. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South of Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the NitWits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.